to FANSPLAINED, a media criticism podcast with Ryan and Em. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Em.
In this episode... Don't sound so excited.
I'm not.
In this episode, we're continuing our deep dive exploration series into the MCU with, you guessed it, Avengers: Age of Ultron.
God.
Spoilers, we don't like this movie.
No.
If you love this movie, this is an episode to skip.
Yes, it is.
This is the finale of MCU's Phase 2, and the culmination of the Phase 2 films preceding it, as well as building upon the foundation of Phase 1. And once again, like we did with the Avengers, this episode comes with a disclaimer, because I get into it a lot more than I did the first time. While we often operate on the unspoken assumption that this podcast is purely made of our own opinions paired with the research included on what we cover, this episode begs for an additional disclaimer. This episode is likely to include heavy criticism of the film, the director, and may have mentions of toxic/harassing behavior. The works of this director have a tendency to be viewed through the rose-colored lenses of nostalgia, and thus, if criticism of this film or director are sensitive topics for you, we suggest you skip this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I get a lot more into his nonsense this episode, because it's actually more salient this time around, sadly, than it was the first time.
Yeah.
So, that said... Age of Ultron is the 11th official release into the MCU, though clearly not our 11th subject to be tackled. It was released on May Day of 2015. That's fitting. May Day. This was a terrible movie.
Yes.
And once again is set in the same year of release, much like the first Avengers film before it. As usual, by this point, it was produced by Marvel Studios and Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. That is an absolute mouthful.
That is.
Disney, please truncate that just a little bit.
I sound so defeated because this is literally my fourth time having seen this mother trucking movie, and I really am just so tired of it.
This is the second time I've seen it ever. I saw it the first time in the theater when we were all super jazzed for it, and I never watched it again, and I vowed to never watch it again, but because we're doing everything with the exception of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because we just couldn't, we had to. Yeah. Because unfortunately, as bad as this movie is, it sets up
a bunch of stuff.
A ton.
It sets up a lot of stuff that they get into throughout Phase 3.
It's annoying how much of a mark this film specifically has on the rest of the MCU,
yep.
Considering how annoyingly bad it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be, I don't think that that's a particularly unpopular opinion, but we are not kind to this movie, especially when we're looking at it as a movie.
Nope.
So there are a few points of contention where production is concerned. Usually this isn't the case when it's just Marvel and Disney, because it's just Marvel and Disney doing themselves. However, the film includes two new characters, Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, whose rights were still held by 20th Century Fox at the time, obviously not now, due to their status as mutants and their original comics origin as Magneto's children, even though this has gone back and forth and changed about 15 different times.
Yeah.
Not the point. Fox still owned the rights to them. Wanda continued to be used without much issue. I think there was like a weird deal that they actually like had to get into with Fox in order to use Pietro. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember what it was, but like Wanda largely hasn't been a thing because they didn't really include Wanda in the Fox movies at all.
No.
So, well, I mean, that wasn't a point of contention.
Well, I mean, they did, but in a very subtle way where...
Yeah, she was just kind of there.
Yeah, it was Peter's...
Once.
Yeah, Peter's younger sister in Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
That's it.
She wasn't even really given a name. She definitely didn't have a character. She was just there.
Yeah.
But it's Pietro that became the sticking point for Fox because Peter Maximoff was a fairly central character in the X-Men film's pseudo-reboots, which we'll get into after this movie.
Yep.
Actually.
We're jumping right into those.
Uh-huh. And while Marvel was given an allowance to use Pietro, there's a reason for the disparate depictions between franchises. At least at this point. We'll get into what they do with this later when we come to it. It's still not great.
No.
This could also be the reason that Pietro is the one that bites it in this movie versus Wanda. I mean, I have to say I'm glad it's not the woman dying for the man for once, but it's still lazy character development.
Yes.
Especially considering that the rest of the movies just kind of ignore Pietro entirely. Most of them. Like, they'll mention him offhand, but for the most part, like...
Like, he was used purely just to offset Wanda in this movie, and then we pretty much just kind of forget about him.
We just forget about him.
Yeah. Until, I guess, WandaVision, maybe.
Again, we'll get into that, but even then, not really. So, additionally, the director also wanted to include both Captain Marvel and Spider-Man at the close of the film. I don't know if this was for the final fight or an end credits thing. We don't know, because it was scrapped, so it really doesn't matter. But an actress had not yet been signed for Carol Danvers at the time of Age of Ultron's release, and there was no way to work a deal with Sony quickly enough to include Spider-Man, so both ideas were scrapped.
Also, it's just ridiculous that he would want that when there's already so much in this movie. That would have been overkill. The ironic thing about this is that Joss has gone on record saying that while he was a fan of Spider-Man 3, he really wanted to avoid what Spider-Man 3 did, which was put too much in the movie, but that's exactly what this movie does. Yeah.
There is way too much in it. There's not enough attention paid to literally any of the plot points whatsoever.
Nope.
It's a mess. So, as alluded to in many previous episodes to this point, and our sadly typical disclaimer, Age of Ultron was written and directed by Joss Whedon.
Boo.
We've addressed many of the issues with Whedon previously, as well as his prior body of work in our Avengers review, but many of his attitudes, story writing tropes, and his alleged favoritism are as much at work here as with the prior film. In fact, probably even more so because this film feels far more Joss Whedon-y than the first Avengers does.
Yeah.
This has even been noted in other reviews of the film, that his presence is far more obvious in this film.
God, this
for better and worse.
Oh my god, this whole section.
This whole section, you're welcome. This is what happens when you don't look at it first. So, among the many problems with this movie, the one that gained probably the most traction among critics was the treatment of Natasha.
Yes.
Because it is largely critiqued as misogynist, and that's because it is.
Yes.
And there are many points to this point. One, you have the forced romance between Bruce and Nat that doesn't really work for various reasons. And this isn't just because we may have had preferences for people we thought had better chemistry with Natasha. It's just straight up because this romance does not work. And it hasn't worked since the beginning. Nat is weirdly afraid of Bruce.
Yeah,
constantly.
The whole groundwork for this ship was set up in Avengers, and even back in that review, I said this whole relationship feels weirdly threatening and disturbing.
Yeah, it's borderline. I'm not gonna say quite abusive because there's not enough of a relationship to really call it that. But it's basically predicated upon Nat's fear of Bruce, and unfortunately in this movie, her fear of everything.
Yeah, she acts like she's afraid of everything when she's around Bruce. I mean, there are some moments when, she's doing fine on her own. Mm-hmm. But it's
for the most part, no.
Predominantly around Bruce and a few other characters, she's just acting like everything scares her, and I don't understand that.
Or she's completely damseled because Wanda is the important girl character at that point in the movie.
Yeah.
And you can't have two of them. God forbid.
Which, notable that none of the female characters really talk to each other in this movie.
No, we'll get to that in a minute too, but yeah, this movie hardcore fails the Bechdel test, which I know is not the benchmark of a movie's sole quality, but when you pair it with all of these other things that are going on, it's not a good look.
Also, it's even more questionable when Joss Whedon was touted as being, you know, such a feminist icon.
Except that his work very oddly, like, at least in retrospect, a lot of his work really doesn't live up to a lot of the accolades that he garnered for that.
Yeah.
Even when you're looking at, say, Buffy, a lot of it is weirdly misogynist too. We just didn't question it because what was like that on TV at the time? Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
He fills a niche that no one else fills, and nobody really thinks too hard about it until everyone else is trying to imitate it.
And because of that, you know, he came across a certain way at one point, and then people latched onto that, and now it feels like, you know, maybe people spoke too soon on that.
It's extremely unearned. He can talk the talk, but none of his work actually, like, lives up to the thing that he's saying he is.
None of it has really aged well. None of it really lives up to scrutiny.
No, and you can sit and argue all day long about how he personally is one, but he's just telling stories, and it doesn't matter if they're sexist or not, but when literally none of his work lives up to this feminist ideal that he was painted as for many, many years, I have questions.
Like, look, I don't remember if I said this in the Avengers review, but I actually really loved the premise of Dollhouse. Okay? I loved the idea behind that. I actually enjoyed quite a few of the episodes in the first season. I have yet to finish the second season for a lot of
Obvious
other reasons.
Yeah.
For many reasons, not just because of him, but even then, even with how much I enjoy that premise, even with how much I like the cast, there are still moments in that show where I'm just like, this makes me feel really icky. And not just because of the story. Okay, because I watch a bunch of shit. I watch a lot of violent stuff. I watch a lot of horror. I've watched plenty, just the whole gamut of films and genres. And I can tell when something is making me feel icky because it just feels wrong, or because, you know, it's a part of the story and it's supposed to make you feel that way. And a lot of the times it would be the former.
Yes.
That it
well,
would be
and there
that
are
way.
reasons for that, because he was allegedly having an affair with the main actress in Dollhouse.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my god.
Again, allegedly, but this is in the long list of all of the controversies surrounding Joss Whedon, and it's not even one of the ones that I even noted down for this episode.
Oh my god.
Yeah. It's rough. So you have, like, the forced romance. You have everyone's disgusting comments about Bruce Nat assuming this romance, even though we've seen very little of it.
Yeah, like
it's so gross that you have, like, this locker room, like, oh, you and Banner, huh? But it's always done to, like, shame Nat, and it's done in this very typical Joss Whedon, Gary Stu way of him always making the geek get the girl, even though there's zero reason for this to happen.
Yeah,
because he sees himself as that geek.
There's also just zero chemistry between her and Bruce. It feels...
Yeah, there's none. No.
And just Tony being like, do you not hiding the zucchini with Banner? And I'm like, what the fuck does that even mean?
I'll get to Tony in a minute, but you have, like, the weird male possession. So you have that, and you have the locker room talk, and then you have that whole moment with, like, Steve confronting Banner about this in this way that's, like, oddly like this, I can't believe you got the girl and I didn't kind of crap that Steve would never do. But then again, we've already gone over how little Joss Whedon can write Steve Rogers.
Yeah, he can't fucking write Steve.
This movie in particular completely ignores anything that the Winter Soldier did, aside from the fact that Sam was in it.
That's the thing
Nat's growth isn't there.
Yeah.
Steve's growth sure isn't there because Joss continues to write him as this weird conservative Christian who's like this straight-laced choir boy.
And literally it feels like...
It's so projecting, and it's really weird.
And then it feels like their whole relationship that they developed in that movie, you know,
it's just nothing.
Yeah,
just
excluding
nothing.
my own bias towards that relationship.
It acts like they don't even have a friendship.
Yeah, it does. It's like they're back at square one again. It's like they are It's like they were back in the Avengers, when I'm like, no, they had a whole movie worth of development.
Yeah, but you have, like, this good visual moment, and I will give the movie this. You have that good visual moment when Nat's on the motorcycle riding around with Steve's shield and then, like, throws it to him.
Yeah.
Like, that is the kind of dynamic I wanted with Steve and Nat the whole time. Why couldn't we have this?
That's the kind of
because
dynamic.
you had to joss. Pun intended. You had to joss literally every option for Natasha but your weird Gary Stu. And I'm deeply uncomfortable on top of this with the way that Ruffalo, in, like, interviews and stuff, would just have this glowing praise of Joss Whedon.
Yeah, that
and it's like, Joss forgot any of Bruce's character in this movie, too, which is not the problem with Nat, so we'll get to that in a minute as well, but
I think that's
wild.
just one of the add insult to injury things, with not just the treatment of Nat, but then all of her development gone, all of the relationship that she built up with Steve, and the kind of relationship we deserved in Age of Ultron, we were robbed of.
Yeah, I don't understand.
I think that's one of the things that just, it always sticks in my craw with this movie.
I'll get to Steve in a minute, too, because otherwise I'm going to get really off track and we're never going to get back to Nat.
Yeah.
But you also have Natasha playing a literal mother figure to Bruce, and I don't know why Nat, who is the one who is terrified of Bruce, who is the one who's probably one of the most vulnerable characters to Bruce, why is she the one who is solely responsible with calming him down?
Yeah, with doing this weird lullaby thing.
No,
this is
straight up abuse nonsense. I hate it.
Like,
why is she responsible for this?
Like, you could still see in the first beginning fight of the movie that she's still scared of the Hulk, and yet somehow, some reason...
Oh, I need a lullaby!
Yeah.
I need a lullaby! Like, then do it, Tony. Yeah. I don't care, do it.
Yeah,
you're like his best friend, why can't you do it?
Yeah, why can't you do it? Is it because it'd be too homo for you to rub hands with them?
Yes. Yes.
I don't get it.
Because, and I'm going to go off on a limb and I'm going to say it, Joss is really only into depicting queer relationships when they are between women and he can sexualize it. Because I don't recall having seen, like, queer dudes.
Shots fired.
I've seen queer women in Joss stuff, and even then, like,
I can't remember.
His thesis behind Willow and Tara is problematic at best, and I used to write this off as, well, it's the late 90s, early 2000s, and the discourse around that was very different at the time, because it was. But at the same time, like, I don't recall seeing queer stuff in Joss Whedon stuff that isn't women. Mm-hmm. I can't recall a time, and if there is, it is incredibly background throwaway stuff, kind of like a lot of early Marvel/Disney going on about how, like, but we included a queer couple in this.
They're right there in the background if you squint.
There in the background, or it's the director's cameo in Endgame.
You know, it's right there in the background if you squint.
It's those two characters you don't care about at the end of the worst Star Wars movie kissing.
It's those two characters you don't even know the names of.
Yeah, pretty much. So if there are dudes, I could be wrong, but I think a lot of it is fandom pairing dudes together versus actual representation.
Yeah,
of
I remember.
Male.
I legit remember when the Avengers came out, Science Bros was the ship for that movie.
No, he only depicts queer relationships, at least in what I can remember, and I've seen a lot of Joss Whedon stuff. I used to gun real hard for Joss Whedon. Everybody did. I'm embarrassed of it, but I also used to be into a lot of, like, really performative geek stuff that I'm not into anymore, that didn't age well. Whatever. But I've seen a lot of Joss Whedon's work. I don't really recall queer dudes. I don't. All I remember is Willow and Tara, and everyone gave him all these accolades for this, except that when you really, really get into it, he's suggesting that you can just turn into a lesbian and you do this because your boyfriend leaves you and you're super sad about it. It's not great.
Of course that's how lesbianism works.
It's not great. Well, and he even literally does this thing where, like, there's a sequence in, like, I think it's, like, this episode where everybody's having, like, dream sequences or something. And this is off the point, but sort of on the point. There's this episode in, like, season 4 of Buffy where everybody's having these dream sequences, and Xander,
who is the Bruce Banner of Buffy.
Oh boy.
He's even worse. Xander is literally like the Joss Whedon
fantasy character in Buffy.
I have definitely heard many people refer to him as an incel.
He absolutely is.
Yeah.
He absolutely is. But he has this fantasy in his dream sequence of Willow and Tara making out in, like, this bright red lipstick for him.
Ew.
So they literally turn them into, like, quote, lipstick lesbians, just to be, like, super hot, but for the male gratification.
Well,
it's absolutely disgusting.
Well, I mean, that's how a lot of dudes think. They totally have no problem with lesbian porns or girls making out with each other, but the minute that it's guy on guy, like, no homo! Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so,
Gay
and I feel like
all
that
that
is absolutely at work here, which is one of the reasons why I think they force Natasha to be the sole mother figure here when she is not that.
No, she's not.
But I feel like this film also
Like,
has, like, a deep problem with Steve exerting any kind of, like, leadership capabilities whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Even though, you know, he should, but we just turn it into a Cap said a bad word joke for 2 hours.
Which I hated, because, excuse you, he literally was in World War II. You think
He's a scrappy kid who got in fights from Brooklyn. You think that kid doesn't swear?
You think that people in World War II didn't swear? Yes, they did. They did.
Yeah, no, but again, it comes right down to Joss not being able to see Steve as anything other than this straight-laced conservative Christian choir boy.
Which he is not that.
He has never been that. He's not this perfect... He is not what the media would have made Steve out to be.
Yeah.
Stop it, Joss.
He's never
You're buying into the propaganda.
He has never been that.
And then you have the one moment with Natasha and Bruce that is the thing that really set everybody off, and it's the reason I never watched this movie a second time until I had to, which is the quote when Nat and Bruce are having this discussion in Clint's house after finding out that Clint's wife is pregnant.
Where they've been, paired off into a room, and she's, for some reason,
she's in a bathrobe,
she's wearing
and
this
he's,
really,
like, half naked.
Really weird bathrobe where her boobs are pressed up. And I've noticed that the whole time.
This whole movie absolutely focuses more on her cleavage than even the first one did, and I still thought the camera was really male-gazy with her the first time. It's worse here.
So much of her framing it pisses me off.
Well, I'll get to that in a minute,
because it's not just because it's male-gazy at times, but it's also just plain ugly.
Yeah, well, and I'll get to that in a minute as well, but you have her literally in the middle of this conversation about how, like, well, why won't we work as a couple, blah, blah, and they're, like, fighting even though, like, they have no chemistry, they have no real relationship.
And I have no idea why she even wants to be with him.
No, but then you have her going, you think you're the only monster on the team, and I know what the intent was. The intent was to allude to the fact that she was raised to be a killer, and that was a killer and nothing but.
To kill without emotion, to kill indiscriminately.
But this was literally following a conversation about how the Red Room forced her to become sterile.
Yeah.
And so this conversation is not about her being an assassin or her past. It is literally about whether or not she can bear children.
Which also, Joss, you forget to remember that when you do that to women, it forces them into menopause. Now, how the fuck is the Red Room gonna help all these young assassins deal with that on top of being an efficient assassin?
Surprise! You can't. And the whole idea that you have to make a woman sterile is sexist as hell.
Yeah, it's really gross that he went for that when in the comics Nat isn't sterile.
No, he went for that because Joss Whedon has an obsession with female fertility. And this is a thing that has been present in many of his works prior to this, and it has been present in works after this.
I really hate that had to be such a fucking sticking point for her characterization.
Well, and it's a thing that Black Widow had to make canon for everyone.
And I hated that too. I hated the fact that they brought it up again there, and that it's officially a thing that they do to all of the girls there.
Well,
and I'm just like, what the fuck?
You see this in his other work. And it's always, like, somehow the woman's fault, even if it's not literally the same thing. You always have these girls that are genetically experimented on. You always have these girls that can't be in intimate relationships with men because they'll lose their minds. This is a very Buffy and Angel thing, and nobody needed this to be retread. Because somehow that becomes Buffy's fault for screwing her boyfriend and not her boyfriend's fault for everything he did leading to that, or explaining any of it to her, or, you know, his actions in general, which should be his own responsibility.
Yeah.
Whatever.
What a thought. What a concept.
It's incredibly rape culture-y, and it's really bad, but, like, it's one of those things that, like, they did not think, or he clearly did not think through the implications of that, and yet Marvel has just had to run with this since he did it.
I also just think it bothers me, the fact that it was a dude that came up with it.
Yeah, because I really doubt that a female writer would have been like, a woman has to have her uterus ripped out in order to be an efficient assassin. Equal to a man.
If anything...
Are you serious?
See, if anything, I feel like, and this is my take on it, and no, I don't write movies yet, but my take on it is if you really wanted something horrific for the Red Room, you really wanted something that would threaten and make them afraid, is that if they did get pregnant, that they would take those children and put them in the Red Room.
Yeah. Or, I don't know, you could have just gone along with a lot of the mind control, the brainwashing, everything that's already there that you don't really need this physical threat in the first place. It's really disgusting.
That's already fucked up. But no, you had to go a step further and do this incredibly invasive and even cruel thing.
And then you have to act like it dehumanizes them to the point where they aren't human anymore. They aren't women anymore. They don't consider themselves women anymore. That's deeply fucked up. And I also don't need a man telling me how to feel about whether or not I can have kids or whether or not I want to have kids or whatever. Like, this should not have even been a point in this movie, and that is the only reason Clint's wife is pregnant.
Like, I don't
100%.
I don't even understand why the hell that needed to be such a sticking point, aside from the fact that, Joss Whedon is obsessed with women's fertility. And again, leads right back to the fact that this being written by a dude is, deeply insulting and pisses me off, because it's like, no, there are way scarier things that you could put these women through. In fact, you already were.
But they always default back to infertility or rape. So on that note, and his obsession with fertility, ScarJo's framing, which you have brought up as being weird, uncanny, ugly.
It is. It's
also just really sexist when you're doing, like, the part where her cat suit is unzipped so far that when she leans over, like, her breasts are falling out of her costume, which was disgusting.
Like, I don't need to see that much of her boobs. Look, I like
I know
her
you
in
do.
The suit. I like her in the suit. ScarJo has nice boobs. Nat has nice boobs. I'm not gonna lie about that. You know. Yes,
It doesn't mean it needs to be filmed that way.
Yeah, she's a beautiful looking woman. That doesn't mean, you don't have to frame her that way.
Black Widow didn't, and I still thought she was wildly hot.
Yeah, that movie managed to film a bunch of women in a lot of those suits and filmed them in a way that was very well done. It was very well shot. The action was good. The costumes were good. And guess what? It was all still wildly hot because I still wanted them all to beat me up, you know? Like,
yeah. But also, pro tip from someone who likes girls, right? There's a reason we all love Florence Pugh, especially in that movie.
Yes.
I don't remember seeing skin.
No.
No. She was covered basically from head to toe through the whole movie.
I mean, we saw her arms.
Well, you know what I mean, though. Like, I didn't need this.
No, we didn't see her boobs. We didn't see her in
There was not male gaze in that film. There was male gaze everywhere in this.
Well, that's because that was directed by a woman.
Well, yes, but also, a lot of ScarJo's framing and the weird, like, insistence on, like, these, like, sideways close-ups were because she was actually pregnant during at least part of filming, and Joss allegedly has not had historically a great record with pregnant actors. According to
one of his Buffy/Angel actors, he basically fired her for being pregnant, and he tormented her on set because she was pregnant. This is going to get kind of triggery, so warning in advance. He made ongoing passive-aggressive threats to fire her, called her fat in front of her colleagues when she was 4 months pregnant.
Jesus.
And once asked her in a meeting, once she told him that she was pregnant, he literally asked her if she was going to keep it.
Yeah, that sounds very feminist to me.
Yeah.
This guy
and
sounds
then
very
suddenly she was killed off and written off the show.
This guy sounds very pro-woman. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember watching that season 2, and I didn't understand why in the hell she'd been written off that way. And now I know, and it still is disgusting. And this came out in the wake of all of, like, the allegations from Ray Fisher on the Justice League set. But it's not just in his films. He has this obsession with female fertility IRL, too.
Ugh.
It's disgusting.
It's really weird, too. It's just weird.
It's super invasive. And, like, the things that he said to his ex-wife when she found out about his affairs, according to her, so again, alleged, were just like, well, but I was surrounded by all of these needy, aggressive women, and I had all this power, and I couldn't touch it.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's super gross.
God, that's
super
so
gross.
nasty.
It's super gross. So you also have, on both of these notes, you have this gag early on in the film where the team is attacked at this party at, like, Tony's house or the compound or something.
It's the Avengers Tower.
Yeah, whatever. Wherever they are. Tony's building.
The compound comes later.
Whatever. Tony's building. And Bruce is thrown into Natasha's cleavage.
Right into
face
her boob.
first.
Bam.
And not only was this gross and done as a haha so funny, they literally reused this joke for Justice League.
Which just feels like a real fuck you from him.
It is. So you have, on that note, I have a quote from Ray Fisher regarding Joss Whedon, and he said, "One of the things that I will say so far is our experience in the creation of this. Joss brought a lot of his personal and professional, for lack of a better term, resentment into the Justice League process.
Oh.
One of the things he said in our first conversation was that people didn't quote-unquote get Age of Ultron.
Oh my God.
And there were certain things being said in that conversation where I was like, oh, this is less about the work being presented and more sort of like of an ego stroke to say, well, look, if you like it in this movie, you should have liked it in that one. Ha ha, joke's on you."
Yep.
So
Wow.
yeah. No, we get Age of Ultron. I wonder if you get Age of Ultron,
Yeah,
Joss.
we get how horrible it actually was and how shitty your script actually is, bud.
He also wrote a failed Wonder Woman script, which I believe I brought up with the Avengers, but it was more salient when you get into all the Justice League stuff because, oh boy, that script is wildly sexist, wildly disgusting. Everything is Diana just leaning on Steve to do everything.
Ugh.
It's nasty, and it's always about how curvaceous and sexy her body is.
No.
It's nasty, and yet in the middle of all of that coming to light, whenever the script leaked, it was several years ago. It was like prior to the Justice League stuff.
I feel like
he was like, but I don't understand why people dislike it. I stand by this script. I really like it.
I feel like
there's a reason for that.
I feel like if Diana actually existed and read that script, she would like not hesitate to punch him right in the face.
I mean, he also threatened Gal Gadot on set.
Yeah, I remember that.
Over Justice League reshoots. He, on top of all of the disgusting stuff that made it into his cut of Justice League, he literally threatened her career, and she said in an Israeli publication that was later translated by The Hollywood Reporter, she said, "What I had with Joss is basically that he kind of threatened my career and said that if I did something, he would make my career miserable. I handled it on the spot." But basically what was happening is that she didn't like some of the lines that he'd rewritten for Diana, kind of like Ray Fisher brought up that a lot of his stuff was really tokenist, token black guy in the room, kind of racist garbage.
Yes.
And he was basically like, you say it, or I will make your career miserable, and I can make you look really stupid in this.
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't have regard for women, and I don't know how in the hell he ever gained this reputation.
I don't either,
as this feminist icon, because, my God, he is not. So...
That's what I keep saying. I don't know how the hell he ever managed to get this reputation in the first place.
Yeah, and sadly, with all of this that we've gone on just about Natasha, this isn't specific to just Natasha.
Yep.
Because we noticed this. There's the male gaze focus on Wanda, her costume design with all the weird dresses that barely cover her privates.
She's basically wearing baby doll dresses through the whole
that are far
thing.
too short for her.
They are.
And they allude that she's barely not a teenager anymore, which makes it doubly disgusting.
Yes.
Because
her boobs are almost falling out at one point, too.
Yeah, on top of how short her dresses are, on top of how bad that costume design is, because they really just didn't have any regard to it at all. The movie, again, like we stated earlier, fails the Bechdel test many times. So you have Helen Cho, who is supposed to be this cool female scientist to rival Tony. Spoilers, she is the only main Asian character in this movie that I can even recall, and she's murdered.
No, she's not really murdered. She does survive.
I thought Ultron killed her.
No. He only knocked her out.
Oh, well, she gets the shit beaten out of her anyway.
Yeah.
Still disgusting, whatever.
It was the rest of her staff that got murdered.
So she refers to Nat as Clint's girlfriend solely so the movie can be like, well, I don't have a girlfriend. Nat and I aren't together. Mm-hmm. That's solely what that scene was for, but then again, it once again places Natasha as solely just a side piece for the dudes around her.
Also how she was only asking you, well, is Thor going to be at that party?
Hate it. Mm-hmm. You have Nat and Laura, only used to emphasize Nat's lack of family.
Yep. And
to domesticize Clint for some wildly bizarre reason that I still don't understand.
I hate the whole fucking farm family.
And then the implication that Laura is basically raising all these children on her own.
Yeah, by herself.
Like, okay, cool, great, I love this.
Great.
I don't. And then you have all of, like, the cut Nat and Wanda scenes where they actually did speak about anything other than a dude or a baby.
Yeah, they actually
who also happened to be a dude.
Yeah, they also talk to each other.
Yeah, no, we can't have that.
However brief, you know.
No, we can't have that. Then you have Clint's family used solely for the obsession with female fertility,
and
I just noted.
And also to joss how people were shipping Clint and Nat ever since the Avengers.
Yeah, I mean, I love that this has basically become he Brited it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been around a lot longer than the Community reference, but it's basically the same thing. Like, his name has become synonymous with canon shit that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, he decimated their relationship.
It's what she deserves.
He decimated the Steve and Natasha relationship and acted like it didn't even exist, and he made Clint have this fucking family off at a farm somewhere that makes no goddamn sense.
It doesn't even really make sense. It doesn't even make sense with Clint's character.
So it isolates Natasha and makes him have an easier time forcing his shitty fan fiction on the rest of us.
I mean, even if you're only looking at it through a character chemistry lens and not even a ship lens, she doesn't have any chemistry with Bruce.
She really doesn't.
All of her chemistry is with all the characters that they are literally isolating her away from.
Like, I know I'm bitching from my ship bias, but in general, she really does not have that same chemistry.
Yeah, like, if you're looking at it, again, purely from a chemistry perspective and not even from a ship perspective, it still holds.
She has more chemistry with Tony. She has more chemistry with Steve.
And oddly, even with Tony, who is incredibly unlikable in this movie. This movie is the one that really, really just ruins Tony Stark for me. When I actually really enjoyed Tony Stark to this point, but this one's really where he just dies for me.
Like, there are a few moments where he's in character.
Most of it is just him obsessed with his dick.
Not those.
That's just most of the movie. The whole zucchini joke, the rape joke. I'm pretty sure he mentions his dick somewhere else in the movie, too, and I'm just like, can you just come off it a little bit, Tony? We get it. But, like, Tony has ceased to even be, like, the self-insert character for Joss in this movie like he was in the first one.
Yeah.
That's Bruce in this movie.
Ugh.
Thus the weird ship where the geek gets the girl, because this is present in all of Joss Whedon's everything. It's always, like, the dude who has, like, zero personality. It's always the incel who has, like, zero personality, zero anything, and I won't give the... Like, I actually liked his Bruce up until this movie when we regressed literally all of that development, and it makes no sense anymore.
And, like, at one point, he even threatens to, like, kill Wanda with his own hands, even without the Hulk.
Yeah! It's super grody.
Which felt really, okay, Bruce, you seriously need to actually see a therapist to work on that anger.
Which is funny because we've already seen him in an end credit scene being a therapist for Tony.
Yeah.
Even though he said he wasn't one, but you get what I mean. Like, no! What the heck? No!
Like, what the fuck?
So you have all of that. You have Whedon's obsession with the action girls thing yet again, especially with Wanda basically as his new River Tam.
Yeah,
she's the one that was genetically experimented on. She's the one with the cool mind powers.
Like, she
looks like River.
Her.
Yeah.
She fucking looks
like her. She has the weird brother that's obsessed with protecting her like River.
That comes off very incesty at times.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just gonna say it comes off that way, but also these same actors are literally a married couple in Godzilla. Okay, it's really weird for me to look at them as brother and sister.
Also, mark me. If Pietro had survived, he'd be the next ship for Nat. Because that's literally what happened in Firefly.
Maybe.
They shipped Simon with Kaylee.
Oh.
After the fact.
Well, I mean, I haven't watched
Firefly. It's fine, because you're not missing a whole lot. But, like, you're not.
Shots fired
You're not.
Again.
I honestly think that it is overhyped and looked at through hardcore nostalgia, and you know that all of, like, the Inara stuff, because she's the companion character in that, and the main character constantly calls her a slut and a whore and all these other things because they're trying to make him super Han Solo and he just comes off as a chauvinist asshole. You know that would have turned into Rape Culture 101 had they gotten a second season, because they were getting there pretty quick several times.
From what I've heard.
But yeah, so, like, the main girl that isn't the... Because he has, like, this weird Madonna horror complex with female characters, too.
It's true.
And Kaylee would be, like, the Madonna next to Inara's horror, right? And Kaylee is the one that got together with Simon at one point.
The weird thing that you bring up about that is that they actually, like, dunked on that whole thing in The Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, but again, he didn't direct that.
Thank God.
Because I feel like it would have come off very differently had he.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I like Cabin in the Woods, because it wasn't by him, it was by Drew Goddard.
Yeah, so, again, you just see his tropes over and over and over again, and it just keeps getting worse, whereas with the first Avengers, it was dialed back significantly. You could see certain things, especially with his weird obsession with, like, constant quipping, regardless of how out of character it is, and that's in this movie, too. Like, look at Ultron. He started off as this cool, menacing robot and turns into the Tony Stark quip machine.
He was very creepy, and even in the trailer, he looked very
The trailer
creepy.
lied to all of us.
The trailer was incredibly misleading, and I'm still pissed about it. I'm still butthurt over it years later. Thank you.
And then you have, like, this weird... Like, that one party sequence just holds, like, a gamut of sexist garbage in it. So much of it. Because it is, honestly, probably one of the more problematic parts of the movie overall. Because you have, like, all the dudes, especially you have, like, the dudes, Tony and Thor, like, fighting with each other over, like, their non-present girlfriends.
Yeah.
Like, this gives the movie brownie points for having female representation because they were mentioned by name once.
Yeah, mentioned by men, but not heard or seen themselves.
And I'm sorry, but Maria Hill commenting on it for a quick laugh does not sexism excuse.
No.
She can call it testosterone all she wants, and it can be true. It's also undermined by the fact that the fight continues after she says that. But then, on top of that, this conversation continues with the weird referencing of non-present superhero girlfriends. Because
with the Hulkbuster uniform, you have the AI or whatever that runs that program, and its name is Veronica.
Yeah.
And I found out through research on this movie that is a reference to Veronica Lodge from Archie Comics, solely because Bruce's ex-girlfriend was named Betty. And Veronica's the opposite of Betty. We're so funny.
He's so fucking clever.
He's so clever, you guys. So clever.
There's only one part in that whole...
Why are all the AI women?
There's only one part in that whole party that I genuinely liked, and that was the part where with Stanley's cameo.
Oh, Stanley's cameo is adorable.
And he's with all of his little veteran buddies. And
all of Steve's old war buddies.
Yeah, and they're telling Thor, come on, Blondie, just give us a taste of your booze, you know? We're not weak or anything. And then they're just on their ass drunk.
Yes, love it. Love it. That part's adorable.
It is. It always makes me
again,
laugh.
this is... I said this when we were watching it. It's like 1,000 monkeys at 1,000 typewriters. You end up with little nuggets once in a while that are, like, good.
Or it's like my original review for this movie where I say it's a giant turd with little nuggets of gold buried deep in there.
I still think it's just 1,000 monkeys at 1,000 typewriters just throwing out whatever they can, and every once in a while you get something that's marginally cohesive and or kind of funny.
Yeah, like at the very end where Nat sees what Clint's new baby looks like, and I swear to God...
You died over that.
Died.
She's like, fat.
She just looking at her, she's like, fat. And I fucking lost my shit.
For like 5 minutes.
It was
for like 5 minutes.
I think I missed that the other times for some reason because I was just so pissed off at it, I guess. But man, that took me right out. And I don't even know why. It was just so funny that she's calling this baby fat.
Yeah, I'm really sorry that we're not even through the writing and directing and we're 45 minutes in. It's kind of like the last 45 minutes of every Joss Whedon Avengers movie being straight up just a fight scene.
Also, the few times that Clint actually sounds like Clint, that he's in character.
Every once in a while. Every once in a while, he will sound like he's in character. Steve never does.
No, Steve never does, unfortunately. And it's very upsetting, actually.
So, I found this interview with Joss from, like...
Oh, God.
When was this? I don't even have a date on this. Like, it was deleted ages ago, so I don't even remember when this was published. It was before the movie came out, so it must have been in at least 2015 from Empire, and it was deleted after the fact. Because I had to go to the Wayback Machine to find this thing.
Oh, they deleted it, didn't they?
Because this is the one where he makes all the weird comments.
Oh.
Where he's, there was one that I wanted to read specifically that was, like, the quote, but I don't remember where it is.
I mean, you sent me a lot of quotes.
I sent a lot of them because they're all just insane.
And I just kept spamming you with that gif of the old man from L.A. Noire making that face. Because that's literally how I felt reading them.
Face.
Yeah, because that's literally how I felt every time I read it.
Yeah, like every one of these quotes is choice, and I can't include them all because they're just insane.
They're just so...
colloquially insane. I realize that is not the best terminology to use.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. There we go. Thank you.
It is absolutely ridiculous, the comparisons that he makes to Age of Ultron to other people's far superior work.
Yeah, there's a moment where he compares himself to Peter Jackson after Return of the King.
Ha, bitch, you thought.
There is a point where he constantly says that he referenced mainly The Godfather Part 2.
Which I call... extreme bullshit. As someone who's watched that movie several times, that was nowhere near in this movie.
We brought it up with Guardians of the Galaxy 2 for a reason.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Because it made more sense. It makes zero sense to bring it up here.
Well, especially since he's, like, trying to compare the first Avengers to The Godfather, and I was like, why?
What the fuck?
Stop. But then he also said that he referenced The Empire Strikes Back, and, I'm sorry, bitch, where? Bitch, where?
Bitch, you wish.
We just started watching Kenobi, and I'm sorry, but bitch, where?
Bitch, where? I
don't... I'm sorry, but no. No. There is no Darth Vader in this movie. I'm sorry. Ultron was not that cool.
Dude, the amount of farts you had to huff to come up with this shit.
It gets better because then he compares the opening fight sequence, which was dull as dirt. I was bored through the whole thing. Like, it was choppy, it was weird, it was weirdly paced. Weird. The fight was just not cohesive at all.
The coloring
was terrible. The CGI was really obvious. He compared that to the cold open of a James Bond movie.
No.
Uh-huh. And then he spent half of that interview bragging up Ultron when,
this man over here.
That was the one that I wanted the specific quote for. Let me see if I can find the James
This man
Spader
over
quote.
here thinking that he could do fucking Skyfall. I don't think so. Not in this dojo.
There's a specific quote he had about casting James Spader for this, and, like, he's not wrong about James Spader, because Spader's a great actor, and he was a great choice for this.
Yeah, Spader was actually one of the better things in this movie. It's just he was completely wasted. That's the problem. He made a great Ultron when he was actually creepy, and he was volatile, and, you know, kind of unpredictable, and he cycled through these moves.
They stopped that 20 minutes in.
Yeah.
He stopped being, you know, it...
He was wasted.
Yeah, he absolutely was, because he just became a Tony Stark quit machine. No, what he said was, for me, what was interesting is that he is this angry, and I hired the smoothest talker in Hollywood to play him. I did it on purpose. I needed a guy who can give you the Morpheus, but then can just lose his shit. And I'm like, yeah, that was cool for, like, the 10 minutes that happened. Neat. Yeah, Spader could have done that. Did you do that throughout the film consistently? No, you did not.
Yeah, he would have been easily able to do that with a better script, with a better writer.
Yeah, I also don't know how this movie spent so much money and filmed in so many different places and looked the way it did.
Yeah,
which is not on the... This is not this point. That was in cinematography, but it continues to just...
Yeah,
boggle my mind. He also has this weird quote about the necessity of the Avengers being the ones to create Ultron. And I get that, like, he couldn't use Hank Pym because Edgar Wright had dibs first, and Ant-Man was still in kind of troubled production at the time.
It was a production hell for quite a while.
Uh-huh. And he said, of all the heat I've ever taken, not having Hank Pym was one of the bigger things. Okay, I get that you couldn't have Hank Pym in this, but, like, you didn't have to, like, frame it as, everyone's giving me all this shit and they shouldn't. Just explain the situation. It's not that hard. Just say, oh, Ant-Man was still in production and Edgar Wright still had dibs to this character. I couldn't use it. Bam, done.
Like, you're gonna
You don't have to make this a whole fucking sob story about yourself.
Like, you're gonna act like you're this big, prestigious director, but then you're gonna turn around and whine about not having this character.
Constantly. He does it, oh, I was beaten down by this production.
No.
And then it's just like, shut up. Just stop it. Just stop it. I need to bring back that Good Charlotte song from, like, 2003 about lifestyles and the rich and famous, and if money's such a problem, they have mansions, we should just rob them. Like, stop. You come from, like, a legacy family of screenwriters.
Yeah,
like, just stop.
The nepotism is strong in this one.
It's rough. It's rough. So he said, I also thought this was Ultron needs to be the brainchild of the Avengers, and in the world of the Avengers in the MCU, Tony Stark is that guy. Okay, fine. Banner has elements of that guy. We don't really think of him as being as irresponsible as Tony Stark, but the motherfucker tested gamma radiation on himself with really terrible, way worse than Tony Stark results. Okay, my dude, did you forget about literally all of the development you wrote into Bruce's character in the first Avengers movie?
And how all of that really fucked him up mentally?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Bruce would be the one character to go, yo, this is a bad fucking idea.
Yeah.
But no, he's just gonna meekly sit there while Tony makes the murder robot. Mm-hmm. But even then, Tony doesn't even make the murder robot. So, like, we try and act like this movie was so great for AI. It was an accident!
And see, this is the other thing, too, is that, like you said, he just kind of he just goes along with what Tony wants, right? He's just like,
every time!
Except when he has that argument with Nat in the bedroom, he's very fucking, like, you know, abrupt with her and very...
Well, it's kind of like that moment where he's suddenly abrupt and confrontational and trying to kill Wanda.
Yeah. He has no
I'm
problem,
sorry, what?
He has no problem acting this way towards women, but when it comes to, having any kind of disagreement with another man, he does roll over.
He does. And, like,
I don't like that.
There's this problem also with Wanda and that reception, with Steve also, because, like, he's immediately dismissive of her when Steve Rogers would not be dismissive of her.
No.
Especially when she's saying, yo, you know what, I screwed up. And I realized that I screwed up, and we're trying to make this right. Steve would be like, you know what? Great. That would be Steve's reaction, not cagey bullshit.
Especially after what he went through with Bucky in The Winter Soldier.
Yeah, he'd probably look at Wanda as somewhat like Bucky.
Yeah.
I said it, but wow, someone doesn't know how to write and ignored how the Winter Soldier worked. Amazing.
Yeah, you'll talk about setting up all this other stuff, but you'll completely ignore everything that comes, in between your other fucking movie.
But also, you can't act like either. You also can't act like Ultron is a brainchild of the Avengers. He is a brainchild of Tony's ego run rampant, basically, or his lack of impulse control. He didn't talk to the other Avengers about this.
No.
The other Avengers didn't know about it unless you're Bruce rolling over and showing your stomach.
Like, sure, you can argue that this is driven by Tony being freaked out and his anxiety
I can
and all this
understand
shit.
it with Tony, but
sure,
the rest of it doesn't make sense.
No.
But the rest of Tony's writing outside of this also doesn't make sense.
No,
so I still don't understand.
Because we literally go making this fucking thing here, and then in Civil War, we need to be put in check by the government. And I'm like, wait, did you forget?
I privatized world peace.
Iron Man 1 and 2, when he's literally spending most of the movie being like, no, you can't have my shit because it's my shit and I don't trust you with it.
Literal quote. I privatized world peace. You're welcome.
Where the consistency? America, explain.
I mean, I agree. But not only does this happen once, it happens again without thought or regard. Ooh. And even then, Tony also takes credit for that. When Tony didn't come up with Vision, he took Ultron's work and just added his own onto it.
If anything, Thor created Vision.
Tony just became Thomas Edison.
Oh.
I said it.
Damn.
None of this movie is about Tony actually coming up with anything. Ultron is an accident and Vision is Ultron's.
Ultron and Thor's.
Well, but the body is Ultron's.
Actually, the body is more Helen Cho's.
But you get what I mean, is it's Ultron mind controlling her to do it, so whatever. Either way,
it's technology that he did not come up with.
Yeah,
someone
it's not
else came
Tony's
up
technology.
With, and Thor was the one to give it life. So it's literally other people's creation, not his. The only thing that he created was Jarvis, the AI, that ends up in there.
So this undermines Tony's character. It undermines Bruce's development that Joss literally wrote. Whatever. But then on top of this, you also had an alleged conflict between Whedon and Marvel over both the farm scenes. Can't imagine why. It's not like they were intolerable and dull, on top of being offensive and sexist.
And stupid, and just making no fucking sense.
Yeah, or, I don't know, continuing to show that Tony and Steve continue to have no chemistry.
You just chop wood aggressively next to
rips
each
it
other.
apart. Yeah, and the various dream sequences, which fittingly most were retconned or jossed after this film anyway. Especially the one with Thor and Hell.
We have to talk about Steve's dream, because...
Oh, yeah. Steve's dream where he's afraid of going back in time to be with Peggy, when that's literally what happens at the end of Endgame.
Listen.
America, explain!
Listen. If Wanda is there, making them experience their worst fears or shit that, their worst memories or things that are clearly traumatized them, why the hell is Steve's literally dancing with Peggy's and going home?
And going home to Peggy.
What the fuck?
When this is also literally the ending for Steve that I hate the most. Surprise.
What is that nightmare? I don't understand.
I mean... fitting in a way, because that's the ending that shouldn't have happened for him.
Oh my god.
But unintentional. Like, deeply unintentional. Yeah, but apparently they didn't like a lot of those scenes. Can't imagine why.
Yeah, I can't imagine why.
You also had, of course, Joss was the one to do the Red Room, and I'm still mad about it.
I'm incredibly angry about that.
He didn't deserve it. But of course
No.
he was going to, because he has this thing throughout all of his work, this obsession with shady government organizations. Like, this is just his shit. And I hate it. It was bad in Buffy, it's bad now. It was bad in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's bad now. It was bad in Angel, it's bad now.
It's bad in everything he touches with it, really.
Yeah, so you also have the movie that is not at all based on the Age of Ultron comic storyline. It's just borrowing the name. Because they just liked the name.
Which I don't even know why it's called an age when it lasts, like, a few days.
Right. You also have Joss, who wanted to add all these extra characters to the movie and was so insistent on the Maximov twins being there, complaining about how juggling all the characters in the movie was a, quote, nightmare.
Then why the fuck did you want to add more?
I don't know.
Big brain here.
Big brain on Brad. He also, quote, didn't want to rehash what made the first one work.
Except that's
because that's literally what this movie does.
Yeah, that's literally what you did, though.
Except badly.
Yeah. Like, there were still some enjoyable moments in the Avengers. And, like, even now, some parts have not aged well, but some are still good.
This ain't that.
No, this
We
is
were
not
mad
that.
throughout the whole thing. We're just like, I'm bored, I hate this, this movie's terrible throughout the whole thing. He also said that he couldn't figure out how to top the shawarma end scene when it's literally a nothing burger scene. So he announced no end credits scene on the film, and a lot of people freaked out. And Feige retracted that later, clarifying the presence of a mid-credits, quote, tag, which is how they get away with that being such a short teaser of Josh Brolin as Thanos.
Fine, I'll do it myself.
Who still looked like someone other than a thumb / Joss Whedon.
Yeah, notice how Thanos does not look like Joss Whedon in all the Joss Whedon movies, but the minute the Russos take over,
He looks like Joss Whedon.
Pepperidge Farm noticed. Pepperidge Farm noticed every time.
Yeah, so do we even need to summarize this? Because I wrote a summary, but do we even need to summarize this movie at this point?
I'll summarize the bastard. The Avengers raid a Hydra facility in Sokovia, codified as former USSR, and meet the results of Hydra's human experiments using Loki's scepter. No, we didn't read the pre-movie comic. We don't know how.
We don't, because I did not read that comic.
Wanda and Pietro Maximoff. The team apprehends Strucker and the then leader of Hydra and gain control of the scepter. The big stick with the sparkly little jewel that fucked everybody up in the first one.
You'll appreciate this next part.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
That's what this whole movie feels like. Somehow Palpatine returned. And I say that with the same resignation that Oscar Isaac does.
The same pain in his voice.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
No, but for some reason, Tony and Bruce think it's a great idea to use the scepter to create AI to fit into Tony's secret obsessive project of global protection with the Ultron program. You see, when you say it like that, it sounds bad. You
because
make it sound
is bad.
Due to a technical fluke, Ultron gains sentience while the two are conveniently out of the office.
It's true.
And the baby murder AI then attacks Jarvis's interface and builds himself a murder robot body.
Body, it says body. Oh my god, you're just dying because you thought it was funny that I said baby murder AI, because he is a baby murder AI who then turns into a murder robot.
Well, I thought it said booty because dyslexia at work. Ultron then escapes, creates a wild amount of havoc.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
The dead walk.
The dead speak.
God, so stupid.
The dead speak. I've got no strings on me. And Kane's allies and the Maximoff twins along the way because, you know,
reasons.
That makes sense. The plot demands it.
The plot demanded Wanda be evil, so she's evil right now.
And then later on, when we need to, oh shit, yeah, we have to make them join the Avengers, the plot then demands that, okay, well, we messed up. We want to join your team now.
Yeah, pretty much.
The Avengers attempt to stop Ultron, but Wanda mind controls the team and induces various fear visions, one of which includes Steve not wanting to dance with Peggy after all, apparently.
Fuck!
This causes the Hulk to rampage in South Africa because he was a big Steggy fan. More than breaking Harlem.
No, seriously, this is a serious question I have about this point. Why is it always places with heavy minority populations, Bruce?
I mean, I'd rather ask Joss that because he seems to want to keep making that a fucking thing.
Well, I broke Harlem. I broke the middle of,
some African city.
oh god, it's a big one, too. I forgot which one it was, but this big metropolitan area in South Africa. Okay, why is it always places with heavy minority populations? I have questions. Bruce, seriously, what is your obsession with going to countries with a bunch of minorities and then breaking everything?
What's the obsession with, trying to place these battles in other fucking countries that aren't the U.S. now?
And they're always filmed under that, Middle Eastern Mexican yellow filter.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
Until
Civil War is guilty of that, too, to be fair.
Until Tony gets in a fight with him, subdues him, and the Avengers basically flee to avoid international backlash.
Which we don't bring back up again until Civil War.
And then we blame Wanda for it, not Bruce.
Yeah, even though Bruce is the one that was literally facing, being arrested, and then we just conveniently forgot about that.
Yeah, conveniently.
Cool.
This lands them on Clint's secret farm, which, again, makes no fucking sense, and
With
I hate
his
it!
secret farm family!
Ugh, until they can come up with a plan of attack to go against Ultron. Meanwhile, Ultron begins building himself an android body in South Korea, as you do, at least until Wanda reads his mind and has a moment of crisis over Ultron's apparent plan to eradicate humanity because, her just wanting to kill, specific people was fine. Eradicating all of humanity, well, that's just too much.
Well, that includes her, obviously.
It includes her and her not brother lover.
God.
This distracts him enough for the Avengers to steal the android body and for the Maximoffs to defect, as the plot demands.
Yep.
Tony and Bruce then continue to be asinine and be like, well, maybe if we just do it a second time.
You only live once, but you make murder robots twice.
Maybe if we do it a second time, but do maybe one thing different, it'll be okay.
Even though Ultron did most of the work for us. YOLO!
And upload Jarvis into the android body using the stone and Loki's scepter to Pinocchio him to life, creating Vision, who also has no strings on him, but has a very fancy golden cape the minute he sees Thor's cape. And
that was cute, though. That was actually a cute moment.
That was actually cute. I also liked when he picked up Thor's hammer.
Yes.
Because that honestly...
was also cute, and a character point, and I liked that.
Yeah.
Fine.
But again, I still think he's more Thor's baby at that point.
Yes.
Ultron decides to use Sokovia for his plan to throw the Earth at itself.
How else do you describe that other than he's gonna chuck the Earth at the Earth and create a meteor so bad that it eradicates all of human life?
Yeah, resulting in a collision to wipe out the life on the planet, using Tony's once robot army of protectors to lift a whole city out of the ground and into the air because, that's how that works.
Sure.
In order to attempt to chuck it back at the planet. Blah!
There are no strings on him, you see.
And no strings on physics either, because fuck physics, right?
Fuck your physics!
Fuck your physics, I made a murder robot. Blam!
I made a murder robot, and we're literally never going to take responsibility. Oh, that was another quote that I wanted. Actually, speaking of, let's see, where was it? He actually said, regarding the whole Ultron thing and Tony and Bruce creating him, you have to make it their responsibility without just making it their fault. Okay, I'm sorry, point me to where Tony takes responsibility for literally anything.
Bitch,
please.
where?
Bitch, where the fuck? Also, where does Bruce take responsibility for this? He fucks off
planet.
He literally fucks off the planet.
Like, he just goes by into the sun before it was a cool thing to do, Icarus.
I still can't believe I was right about that.
His name is Icarus. He flew into the sun. You get it?
I was just joking. I didn't think he'd actually go fling himself into the sun.
Well, this is basically what Bruce does, except it's not into the sun, it's just into space.
Yeah, where he gets to go, to be the star.
Be in a much better movie.
Yes, be in a much
Jesus.
better... be in a much better...
He yeets himself into a better movie.
He yeets...
You're welcome.
It's funny because it's true.
It is true. So...
Thanks, Taika.
Thank you, Taika, for fixing any of this.
Yes, and then making fun of it later in your own movie. God bless.
Primary returning cast for this movie includes RDJ, Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Don Cheadle, Paul Bettany, and then it also introduces Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda Maximoff. You have Aaron Taylor Johnson as Pietro Maximoff. Rest in peace, I guess.
Rip Pietro.
And James Spader as Ultron. And
also
we deserved so much out of you, James, and you just
really
didn't give it to us.
Like, you were
so sad.
There was so much potential for you to be one of the best Marvel villains, and then you got squandered hard, buddy.
Uh-huh. So, returning secondary cast includes Kobe Smulders, Anthony Mackie, though I would also argue that's kind of a glorified cameo, but he kind of has speaking lines, so whatever. Samuel L. Jackson and Stellan Skarsgård. You also had introduced or expanded on, because they were only in an end credit scene, so I wouldn't really call that much of an introduction. Thomas Kretschmann as Strucker. Henry Goodman is Dr. List, who's the dude who just hangs around Strucker.
So wait, they have a Strucker and a Stryker?
Yes, because those are separate franchises. Technically. We'll get into that when we get into The Gifted.
Oh, fuck.
You're welcome. Linda Cardellini, a.k.a. Velma, as Laura Barton. La Lacona.
No, don't you bring that up. This movie's already cursed enough.
It is, it's true. God, that was such a terrible movie, though.
Ugh.
And I'd still probably rather rewatch that over this.
Yeah, I would rather rewatch that.
And
over
that
this.
was the Curse of La Llorona was absolutely terrible. Fuck. But I'd rather rewatch it over this. And then you had Claudia Kim as Helen Cho. You deserved better.
Yes.
And Kelly Condon as the voice of Friday, because it's a His Girl Friday reference. You get it? I'm gonna do my SpongeBob laugh because it's bad. It's bad. It's stupid.
Shut up, Joss.
You had returning cameos with Haley Atwell, Idris Elba, Josh Brolin, and Stan Lee as a World War II vet.
Love you, Stan.
And then you had new cameos, and I honestly forgot about this because, again, I've only seen this once, but I literally forgot that Andy Serkis was introduced in this movie. I thought he just showed up in Black Panther.
He was one of the good things about this movie.
I literally forgot because I have not watched this since it came out in 2015.
Cuttlefish.
I did like him as Ulysses. I spelled that way wrong. As Ulysses Claw. And then you had Julie Delpy, which we were both like, oh yeah, we saw her in that Lifetime movie.
The Legend of Lucy Keys.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, it is.
As Madam B in the Red Room. The only good thing about the Red Room sequence was her.
Pretty much.
Because we hated everything else.
And we were too busy going, hey, it's her.
Hey, it's her, because we just wanted to dissociate from what was actually happening on screen.
Yes.
I don't really have a whole lot to say about the acting, because a lot of my issues with this movie are not the actors.
Yeah.
It's the directing, it's the writing. Other than, again, Ruffalo really just singing Joss's praises after this for honestly no reason.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, but I addressed that earlier. So, like, I really liked James Spader.
Mm-hmm.
We deserved a hell of a lot more out of him than we got.
We did.
Elizabeth Olsen still makes a great Wanda, and I continue to think that the writing just constantly does her a disservice because they were setting up her banging Vision from literally the get-go.
From the get-go. And
because she's just, like, obsessively staring at the android body before
like,
Vision's even in it.
Like, can we just, I don't know, let her be her own character?
No, because she's either attached to Vision or she's attached to her twin. It's one or the other. You don't get her by herself.
until you do get her by herself, and she's
going crazy.
She's killing everybody.
Yeah, she got more development in Multiverse of Madness than she did
anything
in all of this other stuff that came before it.
I agree. But and like Aaron Taylor Johnson's fine, other than those horrible accents. But I
don't understand the accents.
The thing is, though, is that I blame Joss Whedon for the accents too, because this was a thing in Buffy. They actually had this like Slayer show up in like season 2 or 3. I don't remember which season it was. It was like early 3, late 2. I don't remember. Her name was Kendra, and she was like the only black character that I even remember having a name in that show. But she was like the Slayer that came in from out of town or whatever, because Buffy had like technically died but didn't. It's not that important. But she shows up, and she's from some unnamed country, and she has just this weird mishmash of like African, Jamaican, just all these weird accents overlaid on top of each other. And it's literally a joke in the show that people poke fun at that accent, and no one can ever figure out where she's actually from. So it's like, wow. I kind of credit those bad, we're kind of making this Ukraine without making this Ukraine accent.
Honestly, the way you describe that, it sounds like something they would have done on South Park.
Yeah, except that this was done thinking it was actually funny and not doing it poking fun at somebody taking it seriously. So it just like it makes no sense to me. But it's a similar level of bad accent. And these accents even come and go through the rest of the MCU. And even when Wanda brings it back in Multiverse of Madness, it does not sound like it did in this.
No.
Not at all.
I
sounds
don't understand
comical. It sounds as cartoonish as the CGI in this movie looks.
I just don't understand why the accent keeps coming and going. Either get rid of it or keep it.
I'm not sure that the thing is that I'm not even going to, like, blame Elizabeth Olsen for that, because I don't think that that's her decision. I think it's the director at the time telling her to do it or not do it.
Ugh.
I don't understand.
But yeah, this movie does not look nearly what the budget of it is.
Yeah, and we'll get to that because we're right on cinematography now. So, the cinematographer for this film is Ben Davis, who we've covered previously. He did Captain Marvel, and Guardians of the Galaxy. So we've covered him before. We've covered his other work before. Nothing really more to say on that other than this continues to be a thing where I blame Joss and I blame the editors, because the editors were the exact same team that were on the Avengers. I blame that part of it more than I blame the cinematographer, especially when Joss is commenting about how he wanted certain things to look, and sometimes the cinematographer just has to do what the director tells them to. So Joss Whedon claimed that this film was filmed very different from the first, and he aimed to shoot it like a documentary. Again, bitch, where?
Oh my god.
Where? It's not realistic in any way. And the CGI, like, so this film had a gross budget, or a net budget, not a gross budget. The gross budget was 400 something, but they had like a bunch of like offsets and tax rebates and all that weird stuff. So like the net budget of this movie was $365 million, which makes it still currently the second most expensive movie to make of all time. Right under one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Oh my god.
The thing is, despite the fact that this made $1.4 billion, so they didn't even care how much money they spent on this movie.
Yeah.
This movie has no business looking the way it does, spending $10 million more than Endgame did.
Yeah, and Endgame
Endgame
had way more people in it, too.
Endgame had more people in it. It had more consistent... I hate that movie, but, like, it had more consistent color. It was better to look at. This ain't it.
I don't necessarily hate Endgame, but I do have problems with it.
So, spoilers, I hate Infinity War and Endgame, and I will not have nice things to say about them. But the nice things that I can say about them is they do look very pretty.
Yeah.
There are a lot of, like, the CGI is very obvious, but that becomes a Marvel house style at some point where they just film everything on a green screen or a blue screen or whatever. This movie, though, it's really obvious.
Yeah.
The CGI looks really unfinished a lot of times. There are fight sequences with Ultron, especially that one where they're in
The ship.
the shipment in Bangladesh. That's where they filmed in Bangladesh.
Oh.
Where they're in the shipment yard, and, like, they're having that fight with Ultron, and it just looks like a cartoon. It does not look like CGI. It's not seamless. It looks like CGI, but it doesn't look cohesive. It was not cleaned up. It looked pretty raw.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't look like a good cartoon.
No, it looked like they were still finishing the CGI right up to
It almost looked
the
like
film coming out.
It almost looked like a rough cutscene for a video game, almost.
I mean, not quite, but it definitely didn't look like the release. It looked more like a beta.
Yeah.
Because the alpha's when it's really raw and it's just, like, the framework stuff, like that old 2000s level, like, bad sci-fi TV show CGI.
It's like
Like Dune.
It's like,
That Dune,
it's
not
like Resident,
the new Dune.
It was like Resident Evil Biohazard cutscene compared to Resident Evil Village cutscene.
Yes, yeah, that's basically it, yes. Like, it just looked really rough, and this movie, spending this much money, had no business looking like this when they've never looked like this before.
Jesus.
ILM even created a new facility in London for motion capture specifically because of this movie. And this film spent that $365 million net dollars. It was more like 400 something, but again, tax rebates and whatever.
Yeah.
It was filmed in Italy, South Africa, South Korea, Bangladesh, England, and New York. Why? Why did we need to film in all of these, like...
Because he really thought that he was making some grand opus film here.
Yeah, and
like,
Italy was what served as Sokovia, oddly enough, despite the fact that, again, they're trying to paint Sokovia as...
like
a former USSR country
like
that's somewhere, that's either Romania or Ukraine or like some weird amalgamation of both countries overlaid on top of each other.
That explains the shingles. And
because basically what they did is they just replaced the storefronts with acrylic to paint it as an Eastern European country, even though they filmed it in Italy.
That makes sense now. Now that you've said that. That makes
That's why it looks so weird.
Yeah, a lot of the architecture and all that makes more sense now.
Also, this development here continues to make no sense to me because we will reveal another character from Sokovia in Civil War, and yet this character has no interaction with Wanda whatsoever.
Nope.
And he's supposed to be this very rich, bitch, important dude from Sokovia,
He's
so
a
you'd think
Baron, damn it.
Think that she'd at least have heard his name before.
He is Baron von Sugar Daddy,
but we
and
never bring this up. Never ever bring this up again. Never. A mess. A mess. This movie looks a mess, but I don't blame Ben Davis because Captain Marvel looked fine. Guardians of the Galaxy looks freaking great. I don't know how this movie looks the way that it does.
It's a mess, and I'm depressed.
It's really bad, and the overexertion of CGI is like, again, I'd rather rewatch The Incredible Hulk, and that's saying a lot because I did not enjoy much of that. I at least enjoyed Tim Roth, and I enjoyed Liv Tyler, and I enjoyed that more than most of this movie.
Also, as much as I had issues with the script, the Bruce in that movie had enough balls to actually stand up to Ross and to Roth multiple times.
I actually liked Betty's dad, too. So, like, there are characters in that movie I actually really liked and were written consistently. The problem with this is I like the characters, but not in this movie. Because they're not, none of them are written well.
None of them are in character, except, like, little glimpses.
Little glimpses every once in a while. It's not great.
I keep making that noise because I just don't know what else to
say. That's the whole movie. And again, like, I don't even know if I want to cover the soundtrack, but I mean, I'll cover the soundtrack. The composer is Brian Tyler, who, again, we've previously covered. He did Iron Man 3 and Thor: The Dark World, which really sets the stage for how nothing burger the soundtrack really was, because the one notable, memorable part of it is the theme that was remixed, and that was done by Danny Elfman. That was not done by the main composer.
And that's pretty much all there is to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically indicative of the whole movie here, is the stuff that is good is still really not that memorable.
No. I mean, I think that's one of the things that really got people hyped. It was the reveal of Ultron at the end of that trailer, and it was using...
That trailer overhyped this movie so hard.
And it was using the song from Pinocchio, because they managed to use it in a very effective, creepy way.
Yeah,
and
I rewatched that trailer before we recorded this, and I still...
There's a reason.
And it's a massive step up from, like, the first Avengers teaser trailer, which was just garbage.
There's a reason why
it's terrible.
There's a reason why I'm still so ass mad about the trailer being good and the movie sucking ass.
Yeah,
man.
if the movie had been anything like the trailer, we probably would have enjoyed this.
Yeah.
So, your overall rating?
I will give it 1 star because Nat called a baby fat.
I give it half a star. I won't even give it 1.
I'll give it a 1 star because of that scene and because of the few things in there that made me chuckle or that I actually thought were nice. It is too generous, I will give it that. But at the same time, knowing what I know now, I feel bad for this cast that they were forced to say a lot of these bullshit lines, that they were forced to deal with this shitty director.
That they were basically forced to kiss his ass for as long as they were. I feel bad for literally anyone who has had to work with this director. I'm just going to go out and I'm going to say that. Because these allegations and the long history of these allegations do not look good.
And they're really nothing to shrug at either. Like,
no,
these are actually
they're not. It's really disgusting.
They're disgusting, they're creepy, they're weird, and it's like, imagine if you were working in that environment yourself, or if someone that you loved was in that kind of environment with someone like that. That's not... You wouldn't want that for them. You wouldn't want that for yourself.
No, he is one of those directors that should not continue to have the amount of power he does.
No.
He should not continue to get work. I do not really feel all that bad that he had to exit that TV show he was working on recently.
Yeah, that I didn't even want to watch after I found out he was involved in it. Because I'm like, no, I don't want any more of his fucking tropes.
Nope. We don't need this. We have enough of it. It's in everything he makes because, in retrospect, it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
It's all the same thing.
Like, it's like he has never grown or... And that's...
No.
He's never grown or evolved, and neither has his work. And that's the irony of having Ultron say that you want to protect the world, but you don't want it to change. You don't want
except that his viewpoint never has. This is how he was lauded as feminist, is because he might have been when he adhered to garbage 90s straw man backwards feminism. But his outlook did not grow up after that.
No.
His work did not grow up after that.
It really
and
didn't.
We are left with
it did not grow
this movie, which singularly is just probably one of the most offensive pieces in the whole of the MCU.
It's one of the worst.
I can't.
I think it is one of the worst movies in the MCU.
And I dislike a lot of Endgame. But again, it pales in comparison to how much I dislike this movie.
Yeah,
and in retrospect, I disliked the Hulk a lot. It was not a good movie. I'd still rather rewatch it over this because this just makes me mad from start to finish.
Yeah, it's like...
I avoided this after
writing,
I watched it and regretted it.
It's like his writing just never grew up with the rest of the world around him.
No, he did not. So, yeah, needless to say, we did not enjoy this experience, and we will be very happy to move into stuff we actually enjoy a hell of a lot more.
Yes.
So, on that note, thank you for listening to this pretty long, bitchy episode of FANSPLAINED.
Very bitchy.
If you enjoy what we do, consider donating on Coffee. Everything we make goes right back into the production quality of the show. We appreciate all of our subscribers and everything you do, and we're thankful for anything from Hulk smashing that like button, but, nicely, and to your questions and comments on each episode, and especially sharing the show with your friends. FANSPLAINED is a weekly media criticism and deep dive podcast, and we're currently still working our way through the chronological order of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, though we're also still catching up. Next episode, we'll be taking a break from the sacred timeline to jump into our next portion of MCU multiverse movies with X-Men First Class.
Thank God.
Hell yes!
You can find our updates here on YouTube as well as on Twitter and Coffee at FANSPLAINED. If you want more of our conversations on the MCU and other fandoms, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell for new episode notifications. Until next time, Salt Shakers, this has been Ryan
And M.
with the FANSPLAINED podcast, and we'll see you next episode.